Hello everyone and welcome to my Zyra support video guide. My name is Melyn, a Diamond 1 Zyra one-trick pony, currently ranked number 2 Zyra World according to LoLskill with over 800 Zyra ranked games. I play Zyra primarily as a support, but also in the mid lane, top lane, and jungle. This guide will focus on Zyra support, but many things will be applicable to Zyra in other lanes as well. This will be an abridged guide, but you can find more information on my text guide on LOL Pro. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me on my stream, by commenting here, or on Twitter. We'll start with the basics. I regularly use about 10 different rune pages on Zyra, but the most common ones that I run are AP Quints, Magic Penetration Marks, Health Seals, and AP Glyphs. Common variations are using MR Glyphs against AP supports, Movement Speed Quints against champions like Blitzcrank, and scaling CDR Glyphs against passive or sustain lanes like Soraka, Nami, or Janna. Masteries again depend on the situation, but I almost always take Thunderlord's Decree as it fits so well with Zyra's core strength, her poke. You can easily proc Thunderlord's Decree in lane by a quick QW auto combo, which we'll cover later. Whether you go 12 points in Ferocity or 12 points into Resolve depends highly on playstyle and positioning, but I prefer the extra damage. The only real change I make in my masteries each game for support is whether to run the execute damage or the mana regeneration in the Cunning Tree. I will run the mana regen when I'm up against sustain or safe lanes where it's likely I will be in lane for a long time before picking up my Frostfang, which takes care of almost all of your mana problems. I take the execute damage where I'm in lanes where I expect to be scrapping a lot and want the extra damage. Skill order, unfortunately, is not as straightforward as you might think, with the most important thing that you take W level 2 and have all 3 skills at level 3, as they are vital to your kit. Level 1 E is low damage and only a 0.75 second root, making it mostly a tool to summon your slow plants, which is why I usually don't get it until level 3. Against high mobility champions like Vayne or Lucian, I will often put extra points in Q before maxing E. Against low mobility champions like Jinx or champions with large dashes like Corki or Tristana, I will usually max E. The most common skill order is E into Q into W, but many people prefer maxing W second for higher CDR and more plants, which make up a large amount of your zoning, poke, and damage. When in doubt, you can't go wrong with what is standard, but hopefully I provided some alternatives that you can use depending on the situation. Now we come to item builds, the most contested thing amongst Zyra players. The short answer is that it depends highly on playstyle and you kind of can't go wrong. The long answer is a bit more complicated. For brevity, I will tell you what I do most often. Usually I will rush Frostfang and Boots, giving me more scrapping power in lane, much greater mana regen, better roaming potential, and a higher gold income. Then I work on the Sightstone for vision and finish Frost Queen's Claim. I almost never buy Eye of the Watchers as item slot efficiency is not as important with the reduced game times in preseason, and the active from Frost Queen's Claim makes up for one of Zyra's biggest weaknesses, her difficulty in warding, as she is one of the slowest and squishiest targets in the game. After that, I go Rylai's. The utility from Rylai's is insane. The full slow applies to your plant attacks and the damage from your ultimate, which applies before the knockup, helping you get the full power of your ultimate. The slow from Rylai's is greater than the slow from your E-plants, making you almost never have to use E-plants again. This item is amazing and also helps with large amounts of health and AP. Next, I get damage, usually Haunting Guys against squishy teams, Liandry's against health stacking teams, and Void Staff against tanky teams. This is my standard item build. There are, however, so many situational items that are very good in different scenarios that I don't have time to discuss here. You can check them out in my text guide. Summoners are a bit more straightforward. I go Ignite whenever I can get away with it. Zyra is primarily a lane bully and a very snowbally champion. Poking people down and then bursting them when they're low is key to her identity in lane. That being said, Exhaust is much better after the laning phase. If you think you can snowball, take Ignite. If you think the game will go late or that you can't win lane hard, go Exhaust. It will be much more beneficial in teamfights. One last thing to point out here is the preseason Ignite nerf. It no longer reduces external healing, only self-healing. So if you want to kill the enemy ADC against a Soraka, you're stuck with killing the Soraka first. Personally, I prefer the number 1 way to counter a Soraka. Finally, the last of the basics, plant aggro. Despite a large amount of Italian dinner food, the short answer about plants is this. They will attack the closest minion or champion until you auto-attack something, then it will switch to your target until you auto-attack something else. This is another reason why you want to auto-attack after a QW combo as often as possible, as it will either zone them out completely or make them take a large amount of damage while attacking you or your plant. Alright, next up, laning phase. As mentioned earlier, your primary harass is Q, W, and an auto attack. This will proc Thunderlord's Decree and the plant will continue attacking until dead. An added bonus of this harass is it only uses one seed, so you'll have another if an all-in breaks out. Positioning and focus in lane is also very important. Usually you want to be as far away from their support as possible and focus only the enemy carry. The exception to this is if their support is keeping your laner from farming, in which case you want to pressure the support to give some breathing room to your carry. The best time to harass is when the enemy is coming in for a CS. It is extremely important to be watching the health of your minions in order to time your harass the best. However, don't tunnel too hard because that Leona in your face might make you regret it. Another good tool in lane is to seldom use E before Q. A very standard all-in combo is EW-QW, but E is a very slow-moving projectile and relatively easy to dodge. Teamfighting. Zyra is primarily a zoning support. Proper use of your ultimate can easily zone enemies away, allowing you to peel and focus on people diving you and your carries. Until you get rylized, try to use both plants as often as possible, and don't restrict yourself to only having low-range slow plants. Proper use of your ultimate is also key. Don't use it haphazardly. The dream is, of course, a 5-man ultimate, but that will rarely happen. Most often, you want to use your ultimate to split the enemy team. Make sure your ultimate is over your plants to enrage them, boosting their auto attack speed. This means that their carries would have to run through your ult's damage, its knockup, and all the damage from your new plants. This will almost never happen, giving your team time to take down their tanks. The final point I want to make about teamfighting is engaging. One of the things I hear far too often is teammates telling me to engage. We have two options to do this, and neither is exceptionally good. The first is to use our Frost Queen's claim to catch people out and let others engage. This is my method of choice, but usually requires teammates which we may or may not have. The second is a Flash E engage. Warning. Only use this when you are extremely confident and the enemy is slowed, such as Xerath charging his Q, or distracted, as failing this will, more often than not, turn the teamfight into a loss. However, if this works, it can be very flashy. The last part of this video is some tips and tricks that Zyra can do. First is brush ambushes. This allows you to do an ideal EW-QW-R combo and deal an absurd amount of damage, even as a support. You can also lay seeds in a brush and wait for an enemy to come. Doing so means you can have up to 4 seeds depending on your CDR. Next up is that you can use your plants to detonate Teemo Shrooms and Shaco traps. This is very handy if your sweeper is off cooldown. One of my favorite tricks is using a quick EW combo to block skill shots, such as Blitz Crank Hook, Thresh Hook, Lee Sin Q, Ahri Charm, and many others. To do this, wait for them to use a skill shot, or maybe be slightly before if you want to be safe. Throw your E in their direction, quickly place a seed right in front of you, directly between you and them. It takes some practice, but it can be very, very useful. Finally, remember that you can use your seeds for 30-second vision. This is useful to prevent ganks as well as face checking. Some of the more unknown and highly effective places to do this is to get vision around Dragon and Baron over the wall, as well as warding the enemy's Tri-Brush from out of vision, which can be very effective against long-range gankers such as Zac, Shaco, and Rengar. And that's it! Hopefully this was helpful and you learned a thing or two about Zyra. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. You can also check out the full text guide on LOL Pro. If you want to see gameplay videos, parodies, or remixes, check out my other YouTube videos. Have a nice day and may your enemies feel the thorn's embrace.